Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for making it back from there. I'm sorry it's a bit cold in here, but if you all use your body heat a bit, then it'll warm up. We are in a smart hotel, but it is beginning to feel rather chilly. So this is the title, Women Stimulating Economic Development. And I'd like to remind you, and forgive me, I've got to swing like this, so I'm going to have my back to somebody to contribute using the addresses. Can we have those addresses up, please, on the board? It's exactly the same as before. It's a great way of knowing, particularly if my back's to you, who would like to intervene. Even if you don't want to tell me what the issue is, just tell me your name, and then I can come to you and get a microphone to you, and you can interject as well. But similarly, if you've got a point you are picking up when you hear any of the panelists, tell me then it can direct the way our discussion is going. And the issue is so well known to all of us and all of you, certainly. There is slow, incremental change and recognition, but how substantive is it? Or is it just really still a bit symbolic? Guardianship, car driving, you all know the issues, but this is really about economic development, about using the resource of women in a country like Saudi Arabia to boost the economy, to see where there's innovation, and to be harnessed as a significant part of the economy. Only 17% of the native workforce at the moment in Saudi Arabia is women. And you know what the United Nations Development Report, successive UNDP reports have said. All these are very clear indications that there's still grounds for significant change. So the core issues for the next 45 minutes are jobs, education, and opportunity. Women as a highly valuable, often innovative resource. And if it isn't happening, why not? What has to be done? 17%, of course, is way below numerically the potential of women in any economy right around the world. And despite some signals, there really are policy inconsistencies here on the direction of travel for women and opportunity. Let me introduce our panelists. My apologies for having my back to you. First, Dr. Taraya Ahmed Abedi. Welcome. You're a member of the Majlis Ashura, the Shura Council. And for those who are not familiar with Saudi Arabia, this is critical because you're one of 30 women who are members of the Shura Council for a 4-year term up to 2016. And you have just spent more than a decade in the United Nations with all the problems there. So you've returned with that kind of experience. And you are the first Saudi Arabian and the first Arab woman to head a United Nations agency. I'm going to come to you first in a moment to just explain where you think this is now moving, whether there is grounds for optimism or things are still pretty conservative in their own way. Joanna Barsh is Director Emeritus of McKinsey from New York City, but more importantly, best-selling author of How Remarkable Women Lead. You have a new book, which is Centered Leadership, but you've also been involved at the sharp end on New York City's Commission on Women's Issues since 2002 and the Wall Street Journal's Women in the Economy Task Force. So you're going to bring the problems of the United States for us to understand here in Saudi Arabia. And Rafisa Ghazali, who's Chief Financial Officer of Chagamas Berhad, which is the National Mortgage Corporation of Malaysia, and you were head of Thomson Reuters Asia for Islamic finance before joining the Mortgage Corporation. You've got a career history in finance. Now remember, get those ideas to me, please. Don't sit on your hands. We're running out of time. Only 41 minutes left because I've pinched 4 minutes of it already. Now let me understand, and let all of us understand, where do you think you are taking the issue of women's empowerment, particularly when it comes to political and economic development, through the Shura, which is a remarkable development here?
Well, thank you very much, and Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There has been a breakthrough with Shura, and I have two of my colleagues here, Dr. Hanan Ahmed, Dr. Firdaus Saleh from Shura, who are attending.
Would you like to just wave to show where you are? Yes, there you are. Thank you.
And it has been wonderful being 30 of us there. I think the empowerment, this is a political empowerment that the King Abdullah, and we always, women especially, pray for his long life because he has been the patron of where we are. We are moving, but certainly the movement is not as we dream it to be or as fast as we would like it to be.
But is it faster than you thought it might be?
It is fast to a certain extent. However, you have to look at the global picture. You can't just look at Shura by itself. You've got to look at the context of the country itself. Certainly, I'm one of the very old guards. In my day, the environment was extremely, if not supportive, it was neutral. I think now the young generation have a more difficult time of making it. Education is all over. Yes, women are in schools, colleges, etc. They're working, but the empowering environment is divided, pro and against. And I think this is the challenge that we all have to deal with in this country, men and women. And I'd like to thank the few men that came, and I'm asking, where have the men gone who are in the big room? I think it's very important for this dialogue to be among men and women, and that's the strength of the Shura.
What does that say to you, that a lot of the men have decided not to come
Oh,
here?
well, either they decided it's not an important issue, or they decided women talk to each other, and we're glad you're a male moderator with us. But I think that...
Send the word out, there's a man in the room.
Yes. But I think it is a priority for the king, and it has to be a national priority for sure. Investing in women is healthy for the country, not only for the family, but for the country itself.
You have talked, though, very specifically about two labour markets, essentially. Do you think there's any imminent convergence between the two markets?
Well, the way I see it, if we look into the future, projecting into the future, right now we have a female labour market and a male labour market. And women in the female labour market are coming to very high positions. Ultimately, development changes take place. And if we ever have, maybe not very far off, a one labour market, you're going to find women at this high level, and what are you going to do with them? There will be other glass ceilings. They will be competing with men. It's a look into the future that has to be well managed, very well managed.
You've just come from the United Nations, where back in exactly 10 years ago, there was the UN Development Report saying all these countries have got to understand the power and the advantage that using women on a 50-50 basis or whatever can bring to an economy for opportunity and so many other social issues. What's your reflection 10 years on, having been in the United Nations?
I think the assessment of the United Nations is very clear. I was a head of a fund that invested in women. And we used to say that women have two roles. There is the reproductive role and the productive role. And they have to combine together. We have to look at women as a social function. They're not just a biological function, they're a social function in terms of their reproductive life. And so work has to bring together these parts of women's lives so that they can work, they can have a family, and they can also not feel the pressure that our generation felt. I think this balance is a very important balance in the psyche of a nation, in the cultural aspects of the nation, and in the economic aspects of the nation.
Can we just cut up that slide again so that the people can see, the audience can see those addresses, because no one has yet come through, so they're sitting on their hands. But finally, before I go to Joanna, what about your view about the male view of this? Is it a mindset problem? Is it a self-preservation problem? Is it an unwillingness to realize the new reality, a natural conservatism? What is it?
Well, if I compare, I have to compare where I came from and what's now. I came from a very supportive environment of a family, a father who was very progressive and allowed me to take decisions about my life. I think the key is, can we make decisions about our lives or not? And that is for all women. Now, parents are very supportive across the board, but what women face basically is getting into the labor market. And when they are there, and I hear lots of the business women who are sitting here complaining about how it's difficult for a businesswoman to open a business than a man. The laws are one, but the implementation is very different, and it's harsher on women.
But in terms of the mindset, are many of the men who haven't come into this room, are they reluctant to embrace it, do you think?
I think many of the men here are willing to embrace it, but change never...
No, those who didn't come into the room.
No, many of them might be supporters and might have other things to do, but I think the mindset here is that any change takes a long time, and we have a confusion between customs and religion. I was empowered because my father believed it was his religious obligation is to educate me and to allow me to make decisions about my life. My father is from Medina. He's a product of the Medina Mosque. So he's a religious man. And he believed this is my right as a woman, as a human being, to make decisions about my life. I think that kind of change in the mental state has gone back a little bit since my father's day, and that's what we see right now. And this is where we need, yes, a cultural change and a mindset change.
Is there anyone here, before I go to Rafisa and Joanna, who'd like to come in at this point to reinforce or to... Yes, over here, please. Can you get a microphone to this lady here? A microphone 3, please. Thank you very much indeed.
Good afternoon. This is again Munir Al-Ghamdi. I'm the Strategic Partnership Manager at King Khalid Foundation. My question to Dr. Thuraya.
Do you agree with what she said?
I don't think that 20 years or 30 years ago when she was in the United Nations, when she started working, obviously at that time, Saudi women could accomplish a lot abroad than in here. But do you think the situation has changed a lot from then? Now from then? Or is it the same? Is it still the construction or the barriers or the... is it still the same 20 years ago? Or can the Saudi woman accomplish a lot here in her own country more than abroad?
Anyone else want to come in quickly at this point? Yes, one of the members of the Shura here. Microphone here, please. Number 1, please. So bear that in mind.
Thank you and good afternoon. I want to go back to the point you raised about the absence of men in this room or just a few numbers of men. I think it's a reflection of how long society have separated women's issue from overall development and overall social issues. This separation and isolation of women's issues into the separate domain that does not have anything to do with the rest of the development issue, I think that's what it means.
As opposed to seeing it as a national resource to move forward and progress on.
We cannot separate women's issues from all other developmental issues.
All right, thank you. Anyone else want to come in, please? Time is short. A gentleman there, number 2, please.
Hello, my name is Mazen. I actually agree that women face a lot more trouble working than men here in the country. I work in a semi-mixed environment, and once upon a time, I asked one of my colleagues, who is your partner in success? And her answer was, my driver. Yeah, so her partner in success was her driver. So it is, I 100% agree.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come in at this stage?
Ian.
There's a gentleman here. Number 3, please.
Just
Why-
something I'm proud of. I'm Khalid Uthman. We're an engineering firm, and for the last 5 years, we've struggled to involve women in a sector that has been actually repulsive to women. We in our company have a population of about 20% of staff. That's about 50 women. Half of them are Saudis, working in an industry that goes around construction and engineering, and that's something I'm proud of. The message is women have to fight as much as men has to open doors for them to be involved.
Thank you. Do you have an idea of why the men aren't in here? Many men aren't in here, this room? What's the microphone, please?
Simply because it's after lunch. I think a lot of just live for that.
All right, well, we have an explanation. Just be patient, Rafisa and Joanna, because what I want to do is just pick up these points so your remarks have a context for the kind of feelings there are on the floor, particularly the view from your fellow Shura member there. that actually this is seen as a woman's issue as opposed to a national resource issue.
I think this, Dr. Hanan is right, but we don't see it in Saudi Arabia only. I saw it in all my work at the United Nations. You go to the UN meetings and you will find women and less men. It's the psyche of men that have not yet absorbed the fact that women are full partners across the board. It has different degrees, but it's there whether we are in Africa, Asia, or in Saudi Arabia, or in the General Assembly for that matter. So it's an issue of social transformation to see that both men and women are citizens, they're both worthy of recognition, and they both will build the society together.
And that question about 20 years ago.
20 years ago, I always say when I was in the UN and they asked me, how do I see Saudi women? And I used to say, I think I respect them much more than I respect myself, in a sense, because Saudi women every day will get up, go to work, bang their heads on the wall, come back and go back tomorrow. I had a supportive family with an open door internationally, so I had an easier life, in a sense, than them. Are they different now? Yes, I think there is a lot, in terms at least of large numbers, in terms of levels of education, but I think the problems that were mentioned that women faced in getting things done here, employment, working, even the work conditions themselves, are, I think, harsher than they were before.
All right, let's move on to Rafisa. Can I come to you for the Malaysia experience? Because in many ways, there are similarities, but you're way down the track now in Malaysia, quite apart from your other national challenges. What's your reflection on this challenge of giving women a role in economic development?
Okay, before I go there, I was just going to add to what Munira said about difficulties in for women to work here. I was here sometime in May, and I spoke at an event. And when I came down from the stage, I had a lot of young women coming to me, reaching out to me. And in fact, even when I went back to Malaysia, I had a lot of people reaching out to me through LinkedIn and asked me how I've done it and things like that. And what I find is that there's a lot of young, very, very intelligent Saudi women, and I looked at their CVs, and what I'm trying to say is that, say for example, if the Saudi women were to work in a more developed countries, are they the likes of SVPs and EXCO members compared to where they are now in Saudi? I'll give an example. After I graduated from London, I went over to Melbourne to work for 3 years. And I was working there, and I found that, yes, it is a little bit more difficult compared to my male colleagues in terms of career. But after 3 years, then when I came back to Malaysia, there's a break. In terms of in Malaysia, it was really difficult for me to work compared to when I was in Australia. So I can sort of empathize what the Saudi women are facing here. There is definitely a much lower glass ceiling. I mean, look at this room. There's a glass wall here. So how do we break, or how do we sort of increase? I mean, you can't completely break the glass ceiling, but how do you sort of increase so that they're at par with the women globally? Because we are at a stage where they have access to what's happening outside. Is there a risk? I think Dr. Thureya previously mentioned that, is there a risk of these women feeling frustrated and they may, find a job elsewhere? So, I mean, that's the point that I wanted to bring it up. But with regards to what Malaysia is doing, I mean, back in last year, there's a World Bank report that was done specifically on women's issue. And the 3 conclusions that they came out with, well, the 2 out of the 3 conclusions that they came out with is that Malaysia's impressive growth record is matched with important advances in gender equality. And the other conclusion is that closing the gender gap would also leapfrog Malaysia in achieving its high income status target. And since then, our Prime Minister has made it, his target to encourage and come up with policies to increase the level of empowerment of women, because he truly believes with more participation of women in economic development would leapfrog Malaysia into achieving its target of high income status. And that's why back in 2011 he championed this policy, and it's approved by cabinet, to give the target to the public listed companies to have 30% board representatives of women for public listed companies by 2016, because he thinks that in order to increase the empowerment of women, it has to come from the top, and ideally it should be championed by a man, because if it's by a woman, then it's seen as a cheerleading. But if it's a man, but it's got to be someone passionate, not a reluctant champion, but it's got to be someone passionate, then I think the spillover effect will come across, and then you'll see more of private participation, private sector participation in this initiative. Thank you.
Do you think this is being championed by men in Saudi Arabia?
Well,
apart from
that's
the
what I
king?
wanted to answer my brother Uthman, who's sitting there. He's saying women should fight. We have fought all our lives. We fight for everything we need to get. I think it's time now for the men to be convinced that it is our right to be recognized as full citizens who can participate and have choices in their lives.
Is that changing?
Slowly, but still, when you hear
which
men
level?
saying fight, then you know there is much work that still needs to be done.
At which level? Right at the top?
I think at all levels.
Or is it a generational
Throughout.
change?
Hopefully a generational change. I hope it's generational change, but it has to be worked at. It just doesn't come. And I think what my sister had just said is, yes, we need male champions to stand, who believe and stand up and say, we believe in the power of women as full partners.
I'll give you notice. If there are men champions who want to stand up before the end of this session, I'd like to know who you are. Remember, I gave them notice, 20 minutes to think about it. Let me pick up on your Malaysian experience. There's one question here from Mimi Jet. When considering the competitive gains expected for the kingdom, should women be included in all aspects of professional and entrepreneurial opportunities? What's your experience in Malaysia?
I think it should. In Malaysia, they're not only looking at the top level, because in order for them to be directors, the pipeline needs to be from all the way, and it has to be the whole ecosystem. And like in the previous session, we're talking about talent. You don't have a problem that in Saudi, because based on the World Economic Forum report, with regards to education participation for Saudi women, it's a lot higher. In fact, it's ranked 90 out of 136. But with regards to economic participations, it's ranked 133 and just above Pakistan and Syria. So what does that say?
It's got a little better, though.
Yeah, it's got a little better, but I'm sure you can do more than that. Now, what does it need to be done in order to bring this economic participation by women higher? Because you surely have a lot of these wonderful, very smart, talent women. So it's not an excuse to have an increased participation.
Right, well, this is where we bring in Joanna, and there's a remark here from Phil Andrew of Working Link. Cultural change to create a larger role for women is extremely long-term in nature. Are there any quick actions that can create step change to enhance the economic and social contribution of women? Joanna, that opens the door for the kind of things you want to say based on your research.
So if we take...
and we're going to look at more
let's
slides
look at
here.
it. If we take the rest of the world as examples, Europe, US, parts of Asia, where we have data for it, you would see, and I'll show you in a moment, that in fact, women going to work is an incredible plus for the economy. In the United States, we did that analysis and saw that a few years ago, the fact that women get paid jobs versus staying at home unpaid jobs, 26% more GDP growth rate as a result. But it takes a long time. So if the clicker works, this is the pipeline that Rafiza was talking about. So the really good news is a lot of economic growth. The difficulty is, even when you have 50 to 60% of graduates from university coming into the workforce, they don't make it through the pipeline.
Just take us through from left to right on that pipeline.
Absolutely.
Can you?
So in the United States, this is the biggest companies in the United States, 53% of the early professional workforce are women. You'd say, we're done, we won, this is excellent, but it's not. Because women fall out or get stuck at every level in the pipeline. And that may be because some women don't want to move up the ladder, but it's mainly because of the barriers that my sisters were talking about. So let me show you these barriers. There's practices that companies create. So women have a hard time, even in the United States where you say, wow, it must be better. It's not, it's more difficult for women than men. Personal practices, women have babies. So we need flexibility in order to be able to work and have a family life that's both fulfilling and good for everybody and for the country. Women need sponsors. Rafis was talking about the need for champions. We call that sponsorship. And really simply put, Nick, that is just creating opportunities to develop and advance. But I've colored the mindsets piece. You asked about that earlier. Institutional mindsets are typically held by both men and some women, and they hold women back. Like, she's too emotional for this job. That's a mindset, that's not a fact. Or, she doesn't look right for the part. I am a very short woman. I get that. I don't look right for many parts that require tall, handsome men. Individual mindsets is the fourth piece. We women have fear, just like men have fear, but we haven't practiced meeting our fear to, in fact, move forward and take those opportunities. So we need some help with that and some caring that companies and government can give. And I'll take you through what I think the smallest steps are. The first, it has to start at the top with all leaders saying, not, this is a good thing, this is my thing. It's personal to me that we make progress. Secondly, championing women, which is what Rafisa told us right before. Third, if we're accountable, we have to invest in data. We have to know the facts, probably report them, and talk about them without bias, for or against. And finally, are we prepared for 30 years of transformation? Because that's what it takes. The US started in the 70s. It's 2014. We're not where we need to be. And you don't even have to read this chart, but to know that there are 3 ways countries around the world are having government help. The first, of course, we all can talk about quotas, which everybody loves to talk about, and most people love to hate. It does work, however. However, we could do what Australia did, which I love. Australia, 12 men came together. 9 of them were from companies, 3 from the government. And they said, we are the male champions of change. They sat in a row just like us. They dressed all in black. They had their pictures taken in the newspaper. And every year, they have been working on small action by action in their companies to show that it can be done. And one of those men is the head of the army. And here on this chart, you can see that the countries that have taken the most active stance are, in fact, have the most women. And I know, Nick, we're talking about all of empowerment, but actually, women at the top pull those women through the pipeline. It's not the job of the women, it's the job of the men and the women to get women at the top. And then women will help men pull these talented women through. It's actually a wonderful thing to see when it happens.
What about the championing that has to be done by men here? You're just saying it has to be done by women.
No, it has to be done by men and women. And
Okay.
indeed, here's the issue. Who is in power? Men. Men have the power, the experience, the access to opportunity. So the championing is helping younger women get opportunity to grow, putting them in jobs that they, in fact, may not ask for. Do you know in the United States, if there's a job opening and it takes 5 skills, women will in fact not raise their hand unless they have 4 out of the 5 skills. Men will raise their hand if they have 1. And this may be the fundamental difference.
Okay, I have to tell you that if we were in Canberra, of course, you would be saying to Tony Abbott, who's only got one woman in his cabinet, what's
Get
gone
another.
wrong
Get
in God's
another.
own country?
That's called the +1. If you've got one, get two. If you've got two, get three. And in fact, you could do so well here. I have already met 4 or 5.
Let's not talk about Australia's problems. Let's just keep, but I'm just making the point that you used Australia, and
Yes.
they've got a cabinet now since the election in
They
September.
do.
Which
Well,
has
they
only
used
got
to have
one
a
woman.
prime minister.
Yes, but I'm talking about the current cabinet.
Yes.
Tharaib, when you look at that, and also Rafisa, when you look at those indices and those aspirations which Joanna's put on the table, what do you think of how applicable they are to Saudi Arabia?
Well, I have one fear. One is, as I said, women have a glass ceiling in Saudi Arabia, not only in terms of jobs.
But these particular issues like mindset.
Well,
and
I'll
the
come to
pipeline.
that. It comes with it. But not only mindset in terms, ceilings in terms of levels, but even in terms of occupations. So we are boxed in a Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, etc. Now, that is changing slowly. We just had our first lawyer. But why is that? It's because of an institutional mindset and an individual mindset. Both of them go together. And so in many ways, unless that kind of mindset changes, what I'm worried about. When I was at the UN, I used to get call from young Saudi women who are studying at universities telling me, Khala, auntie, tell us how do we stay outside? Now there is a migration to Dubai of young women who are looking for work there. Young business women are registering their companies outside and they work here. Unless we facilitate, we create a facilitating environment, we are losing the good people that we would like to keep to build the country. I'm really worried, and in our generation, we went step by step and we were patient. Young people want it yesterday.
Joanna
they
said
don't want it
30
tomorrow.
years. Is that the kind of thing you can contemplate in
If
Saudi
we are
Arabia?
thinking 30 years from now, I think we would lose the young generation. They won't be in this country. They will be left to old people like me.
Is the empowerment through this, which everyone has got, is that going to change the whole dynamic of this issue?
But this is already here, Twitters and Facebooks and all of that, that's all happening. But the issue is the everyday encounter with the system, to be able to get your business done, to be able to register your business, to be able to do things on your own. A simple thing. With my status, my nephew, who is 35 years old, signs my travel permit. Is that possible? Is that possible? So, if you are still in that enclave, what kind of empowerment are you talking about?
Right. Can I get a mic? Can I get a microphone to Bill Gallagher? Bill, stand by, because I just wanted the mic to come to you. I just want to talk to Rafisa first, so sit down for a moment. Rafisa, when you look at that and you apply it to the Malaysian and the Asian experience, what do you see there which is helpful, not just based on the Malaysian experience, but also what you see in Saudi?
Okay, I think this is something across across the world. What's happening is that you have increasing number of women going to workforce in below 30s. But the minute they start to have children and they reach their early 30s, they have to make a choice, because usually the norm is that the women takes a bigger responsibility in taking care of the children. And we saw that's a really big issue in Malaysia, because a lot of the times the women, when they reach in their 30s, that's when they're, in terms of knowledge and experience, that's when they're, I would say, very, very damaging and cost-wise if they were to leave the workforce completely. So Malaysia, in one of the agencies that works within the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development, come up with this portal called flexworklife.my. And what it does in that, it showcases of all the companies that has family-friendly policies, and also it lists out all the various jobs that's applicable that allows women to take flexi hours and flexi times, and which are a lot more palatable for the women who has to balance between family and work, so that they're not completely out of the workforce. At least they contribute, because it's a pity, because a lot of these women are highly educated and they can definitely contribute to the development of the country. That's one. And secondly is that in the portal, it also lists out all the various incentives that the government provide to the companies that has this family-friendly policies, so that at least the women have a choice, that they may not want to be full-time housewife, they may want to contribute. And then what they also do, they have this comeback program whereby perhaps when the kids are a little bit bigger and they want to work, so there is a program by the government to encourage and to train and bring awareness to these companies to recruit back these women who's been out of the job market for 5 years.
Well, let's spend 10 minutes getting a few more bits of evidence and examples of the way things are happening. I can see your hand up there and over there, but I want to recognize Bill Gallagher from Laureate, which is vocational, and you're doing college work with women. Tell us what you're doing, but also the metrics you are beginning to see about the next generation and the training potential.
Sure. Thanks for the chance to comment. My name is Bill Gallagher with Laureate International Universities. And we believe that it's very important for a society to have means to prepare young women to enter the workforce if they choose to do that, with a sense of competence and confidence that they're going to secure meaningful employment to better their lives and the lives of their families. And so there's an important initiative here in the Kingdom that I'd like to briefly describe, sponsored by the Ministry of Labor through an organization called the Colleges of Excellence. And the Colleges of Excellence has developed a number of brand new colleges, 3-year programs that train vocational and technical skills for Saudi students, men and women. And there are women's campuses and there are men's campuses. And if you go to the Colleges of Excellence website, you'll see the selection is there. They're increasing that number all the time. They're going to open up another large number for next September. The first batch opened up this past September. And so the purpose of these colleges is to do a market analysis in the area in which that college is located, to determine what the market needs are for the skills to provide meaningful employment to the graduates, and then to design a curriculum that not just does the academic technical skills for the student, but we think, perhaps even more important, develops the whole person. So it also has a focus on the health and wellness of the student, and it also has a significant focus on the character development and work ethic of the student as well.
So Bill, quickly, what are the first signals you're seeing at the moment?
So what we're seeing right now is, there was mentioned in an earlier session today about a sense of complacency among some students. We do not see that in our vocational students. By and large, with exceptions, they are motivated to come to class and do their work, and I think because they see a goal at the end of that path, that they see meaningful employment or the choice to have meaningful employment at the end of that. And I'll finish with this. The one thing that we would like an employer to say about graduates from the Colleges of Excellence is that, 1, they're technically competent, 2, they understand the importance of a healthy lifestyle, and 3, they're completely honest and they have a good work ethic. And these are the programs we're designing to do those things for both men and women.
And quickly, do they believe they will get a job at the end of it, given what the evidence is in the Kingdom at the moment?
Our sense is these colleges have been in operation for about 5 months now, and our sense is early on they are confident in the system that it's going to prepare them for meaningful employment. So if you were to visit, and you're welcome to visit any of the campuses anytime, and talk to them yourself, I think that's essentially what you would take away.
Right, Thray Obeid, what's your view on that? Is that the moving in the right direction you're looking for?
I think the whole area of training and so on is there. I think the challenge is in the actual implementation of these things. The Ministry.
But it's moving in the right direction,
It's
surely.
moving in the right direction, but I want to see the results of the actual implementation, which is the recruitment of the young people and their placement. That's the measure of success. The measure of success is not just graduating, it's being in the job, and that's how we should measure it.
But at least they're being prepared.
Oh yes, but yes, they are being prepared. That's very good, but then we have outstanding young people in other areas who haven't gone through that institution as well, and they're not employed.
But surely that can be scaled up quite considerably.
Of course, but the test is in what happens after that.
Okay,
Right now, the Ministry of Labor, let me just get to her point. Ministry of Labor has put in a very good package of different modalities for women's work, including flexi-time, part-time, etc., working from home. Now, these modalities will be implemented, but if you, I attend meetings where we have private sector companies coming to talk. They really are not supportive of that kind of modality. That's where change needs to take place. The issue is if women can fulfill both of the roles, because the reproductive, having children, God had given it, but also the society wants it. So it has to be seen as a function that is equal to work.
We've got 5 minutes left. Let me get
Okay.
2 more views over here and over here, please.
Thank you, Fahad Al-Tuwajri. Just 3 comments. I think contribution of women and men was much better 40 years ago to family and society, and we had the dip started since 1980 or so. So we're recovering right now. And the other thing is, I lived some time abroad, and I think gender discrimination is everywhere.
Yes.
It's not a Saudi syndrome,
Yes.
but it's maybe overemphasized somehow. The last thing, I'm wondering if overinvestment on women will make them feel that they're special or entitled and might affect their outcome and enrollment in the society.
All right, Thoraya, that last question particularly, does it create an exaggerated sense of entitlement at the end?
It's not an issue that is overemphasized here, it's overdone here. In other words, gender discrimination here is much more systemized. It's part of a system rather than just an individual act.
Joanna, do you think that leads to some kind of
Sure,
positive
no,
assessment?
I think it's where we start from. So Belgium took that same question and really worried about it, particularly since the women in Belgium did not want a quota. And what the parliament said was, we are so underinvesting in women that by putting more attention, we won't level the playing field, but we'll make it a little bit more even. So I wouldn't worry about the dangers of over-investment being entitlement. I do think you're going to find some senior women who will be unhappy and thinking that maybe you hired me just because I'm a woman. And we know that's definitely not the case, because every company wants to create value and make money. So they're going to hire the right people.
I just wanted to comment that maybe also it's not only to recognize the increasing role of women. It doesn't only need the change of mindset, but even further to change perhaps the performance evaluation matrices in companies, because the way it was designed, it was originally intended for men. So it does not allow for to recognize the role that the women are contributing. So for example, the new innovations that are allowing women to work through telework and other forms would not really allow these women to break that glass ceiling that you were talking about before. And this is why they're usually stuck in entry-level jobs and middle performance jobs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to pick up on that at all? No, okay. Right, 2 or 3 interventions here, all from men actually. One here, just one, I can take one, and one here, please. Do any of the, we have 2 women here as well. Please, can we get the microphone over here? Thank you. One from here, please.
My question is, one of the big threats for women entering the labor force would be pregnancy. And for small businesses, it's very hard to support women joining the labor force if they would take a leave for pregnancy. For example, I'm the managing director for Injaz Commercial Company, and one of my first decisions was hiring 3 women as an accountant, and one of them resigned, and the other took a 5-month leave for pregnancy, and the third got bored and left by herself. But
okay, right, we got the message. We got the message.
How would small businesses lose such money in fighting and supporting the women joining the labor force?
That's understood. Most countries do cope with this, though, quickly.
Yes, they do.
Joanna.
Well, first of all, the countries that do the best are Sweden and Norway, that have very interesting country-level policies so that you don't suffer as a small business.
My question is to all men. If you were pregnant, you would take longer leaves than we do. But that's another story. But let me just point out.
As you know, there are big debates about that in many other countries too.
But let me ask you a question. By saying that pregnancy becomes a negative rather than a positive, are you penalizing women for something that's given to them by God?
I should
Right now
just-
in Germany, many women are not getting married just because they want to enter the labor force and
Okay.
excel.
But we don't want that.
Right, I think we know where there is still a division on this. I should ask, are there any men here who've taken paternity leave and pregnancy leave?
Nobody.
Hands up. Are you putting your hand up? Okay, there you go. Right, let me go to the women's table here. One moment, microphone 4, please. Go ahead, microphone 4.
Okay, we're facing a lot of difficulties with the market. Sorry. And some of the companies actually closing the ladies section in the name of downsizing. Yes.
All right, and your colleague, I think.
Can I, just 1 minute. Thankfully, the society has become more accepting about women and their work. But there will always be that mindset where the breadwinner is the man, and it's a privilege for a woman to work. It is, but it's also hard work. And having a job is an extra privilege, actually. My friend and my friend Nof and I, we faced a situation in a company where it has to downsize. So based on these reasons, actually, they shut down the ladies section. Not based on, there was no evaluation on, you know, I guess,
Okay,
how good you are.
understand the point. How symptomatic of that, of the issue, is that a problem? Is that a problem?
I don't know how symptomatic, I don't know how many companies closed because...
The women's section.
The women's section. But certainly it shows that women can be dispensed with, regardless whether they perform at the highest level or not. And there are many studies that show that women are better performers than men. And I hear it from the business people as well.
So there's an excellent economic analysis done by Harvard in the 90s about violin leaders, first violinists. Everybody in the United States and in Europe knew that men were better at violin than women because women are too emotional, women can't handle the instrument, women will take pregnancy leaves and never come back. So they did blind auditions, and the upshot of that was that most of the new people hired were women, and as it turns out, they didn't overtake their pregnancy leaves. They worked the same hours and the same time as men, and they became excellent first violinists. It takes a lot of courage, all of the men working together to say, we need to shift, and it's scary to do that, frankly.
Probably playing a violin during pregnancy keeps you calm, doesn't it?
There's
Right.
actually no data on emotion, by the way.
Okay, one final intervention, please, from a non-Saudi.
Charles Savage from the US and Germany. I just came from Jeddah where I was teaching in an MBA program in Dar al Hekma University. These women are totally outstanding. They're world class. What I suggest we do is get rid of the concept of the glass ceiling and start to talk about the black wall of male blindness.
Whoa.
Could I just pick up on that, having asked the same question of Bill Gallagher? What kind of prospects do those you've been teaching feel they have?
The first batch is still working. They told me after a year...
Inside Saudi Arabia?
Inside Saudi Arabia, that they are better mothers, and many of them are mothers. They have more confidence. They are quieter inside, and they have an amazing drive. I was so impressed by these ladies. And I teach in India, I teach in Germany, I teach in Sweden. And these ladies are top of the line.
Do you feel a mountain on this issue moving?
Excuse me?
Do you feel the mountain on this issue moving?
Something is happening, and when we men wake up, it is not just the woman as an object. It's the woman as a lively subject, as a colleague. And when we understand that, all of this other nonsense will start to disappear.
Thank you. That's an important observation from a man who's watching this. Now, I gave you all notice about this question. How many men in this room are prepared to stand up and fight for women's rights in the economy? Well, I'll allow them to raise their hand, not stand up. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've come to a debate about women and also about the future of your economy. I would say, though, and I can understand that some people want to sit on their hands, that there's a degree of reluctance there, but it's perhaps symptomatic of where Saudi Arabia currently is. And there's a question here on Twitter: are Saudi men ready for full economic participation by Saudi women? As you're speaking for Saudi women on the panel, what do you think?
I think some are not. It's like any society. And I think, well, let's take the Shura as an example. I think when we first joined the Shura, the men didn't know what to do with us. We listened, we didn't talk much because we wanted to know how is it played and so on. But then they've accepted us and we are working together very well. It takes time, but also, and I think this is what my colleague said here, that we showed that we know. We are well prepared. We come to the sessions very well prepared, and we make good sense. And even the president of the Shura made a statement about it.
Well, let me ask your two colleagues on the Shura, do you believe that men are ready for full participation by women in the economy? Yes, they're both nodding agreement. What? And they're very supportive.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great way to end it. We haven't resolved the issue, but we've certainly identified that the potential for women is there, and things are moving at different rates depending on how you view it. Can I thank you all very much indeed, and particularly to our panelists. Thank you.